Tim leans forward, his voice steady but sympathetic. You start by being honest with yourself. Do you trust her, John? Deep down, do you believe she's capable of this? The question hangs in the air, heavy and suffocating. Trust. A word that once felt so solid between Jane and me now feels like sand slipping through my fingers. I think about the little moments, the late nights she's spent at meetings, the phone calls she's taken in hushed tones. They felt innocuous at the time, but now they're tiny puzzle pieces that don't quite fit together. I don't know anymore, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. Tim looks at me with a mixture of pity and resolve. You need to find out, for your own sanity. Pretending this isn't happening won't make it go away. He's right, of course. But the idea of confronting Jane feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the unknown. What if I jump and there's no ground beneath me? What if everything I've built shatters, leaving nothing but broken pieces? That night, I sit in my car outside the house for far longer than I should. The lights are on in the living room, and I can see Jane moving around, setting the table for dinner. It's a scene straight out of a family commercial. The perfect wife, the perfect home. Except now, it all feels like a lie. When I finally go inside, the smell of roasted chicken fills the air. Jane greets me with her usual warmth, kissing me lightly on the cheek. Dinner's almost ready, she says, motioning toward the table. I nod, my stomach churning. Smells great. As we sit down to eat, I study her carefully. She talks about Emily's wedding plans, the florist she met with, and how Emily's stressed about finding the perfect shoes. She's animated, laughing, and smiling as if nothing's wrong. But to me, every word feels like a performance, every gesture rehearsed. Are you okay? She asks suddenly, her brow furrowing. You've been quiet all week. I hesitate, my fork hovering over my plate. Work's been stressful, I lie. She reaches across the table, placing her hand over mine. I know you've been working hard. Just don't let it consume you, okay? We need you. Her touch feels both comforting and foreign, and I pull my hand away, pretending to adjust my napkin. Yeah, I'll be fine, but I'm not fine. Not even close. The following week, I decide I can't live in limbo anymore. I need answers. So one evening, when Jane says she's going out for a girls' night, I decide to follow her. My heart pounds as I trail her car at a safe distance, my palms slick with sweat. This feels wrong, invading her privacy, but I can't shake the image of her at that motel. She drives across town, pulling into the parking lot of a small Italian restaurant. I park a few spaces away, my breath catching as I watch her step out of the car, dressed in a way that feels too polished for a casual night with friends. My chest tightens when a man approaches her, his hand resting lightly on her back as they walk inside together. I sit frozen, my mind racing. There it is, the confirmation I didn't want but somehow expected. Jane, my wife, with another man. When she comes home later that night, I'm sitting in the living room waiting. She's startled to see me still awake. You're up late, she says, slipping off her heels. I couldn't sleep, I reply, my voice flat. She pauses, studying me. Is everything okay? I stand, my hands clenched at my sides. Who was he? Her face pales, the color draining so quickly it's almost impressive. What are you talking about? She asks, her voice steady but laced with caution. I saw you tonight, Jane, I say, my voice breaking. At the restaurant. With him. For a moment, she doesn't speak. Then she sighs, sitting down on the armrest of the couch. John, it's not what you think. Don't, I snap, my anger finally breaking free. Don't insult me by pretending this is innocent. Tim saw you at a motel last week, and now this? How long, Jane? How long have you been lying to me? Her eyes fill with tears, and for a fleeting moment, I feel a pang of guilt. But then she speaks. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she whispers. I didn't plan for any of this to happen. Her words hit me like a freight train. So it's true? You're having an affair? She nods, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, John. I never wanted to hurt you. I laugh bitterly, the sound hollow and foreign. You never wanted to hurt me? Do you have any idea what you've done? To me? To our family? The days that follow are a blur of pain and confusion. Emily notices the tension immediately. What's going on with you two? She asks one evening, her eyes filled with concern. Nothing, I say too quickly, forcing a smile. Just the usual stress. But Emily isn't convinced. You two are acting weird. Is everything okay? I want to tell her the truth, to let her know that her perfect family is crumbling beneath her feet. But with her wedding just weeks away, I can't bring myself to ruin her happiness. Instead, I keep the secret buried, letting it fester inside me like a wound that refuses to heal. One night, as I sit alone in the living room, Tim calls. How are you holding up? He asks. Barely, I admit. I don't know what to do, Tim. Emily's wedding is so close, and I can't blow this up right now. Tim sighs. I get it, man. But you can't keep living like this. You deserve better. His words stick with me long after we hang up. Do I deserve better? Or is this just the price I pay for years of complacency? For not noticing the cracks in our marriage before they became fractures? The wedding day arrives, a beautiful spring afternoon filled with laughter and love. Emily looks radiant, her happiness a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. Jane and I put on a united front, smiling for photos and making small talk with guests. But beneath the surface, the tension is palpable. As I watch Emily dance with her new husband, I feel a pang of sadness. This should be a day of pure joy, but instead, it feels like the beginning of the end. After the wedding, I sit Jane down for one final conversation. I can't do this anymore, I tell her, my voice firm. The lies, the betrayal, it's too much. She nods, her eyes downcast. I understand. And just like that, 16 years of marriage come to an end. It's not dramatic or explosive, just two people acknowledging that what once was can never be again. Months later, I'm sitting on the porch of my new apartment, a beer in hand. Tim joins me, cracking open a can of his own. How are you feeling? He asks. Better, I say honestly. It's not easy, but it's better. Tim nods, clinking his can against mine. To new beginnings, he says. And as I sit there, the weight of the past slowly lifting, I realize he's right. It's not the life I planned, but it's a chance to start over, a chance to find something real. Here's an expanded version of your script that builds on its emotional depth, conflict, and tension to reach approximately 1,500 words. Start with Emily, Tim says. She deserves to know, especially with a wedding coming up. If this blows up later, it'll be worse for her. The suggestion feels like a slap. Emily, my little girl, who used to climb onto my lap with bedtime stories and hide in my coat when she got scared. How do I tell her? How do I break something that's already so fragile? She's not a little girl anymore, though. She's a woman, one with plans, dreams, and a life about to unfold. Tim's right, of course. She deserves to know the truth. I stare at the worn photograph on the side table, one of Emily as a child, all bright eyes and messy pigtails. There's no turning back. The weight in my chest shifts, and for the first time in weeks, I feel something besides anger and confusion. Urgency. Time is slipping through my fingers, and if I don't act now, I'll regret it. Hey there. This is Jane. The house feels too quiet, the kind of silence that sits heavy, like it's waiting for something to happen. John's upstairs in the bedroom, no doubt glued to one of his home renovation shows. He likes projects with neat conclusions. Broken things fixed, cracks patched, everything made better in under an hour. Life doesn't work like that, though. I pick up my wine glass, the stem cool against my fingers, and stare at the framed photo of us on the mantel. John picked it out, a glossy, posed shot from our anniversary trip to Greece. The perfect couple, frozen in time. But I remember the trip differently. The awkward silences over breakfast. The polite but distant questions like, "What do you want to do today?" Instead of spontaneous laughter. The photo lies. Andrew doesn't lie. He doesn't sugarcoat things or pretend everything's fine when it's not. I met him at a gallery opening downtown. It wasn't my scene. I rarely go out these days. But Emily insisted, dragging me by the arm with that relentless optimism of hers. "You need a night out, Mom," she said, flashing me her winning smile. I wanted to say no, to stay home and let the quiet blanket me. But I didn't, and there he was. Andrew. He stood by a minimalist sculpture, hands tucked in his pockets, head tilted like he was trying to solve some ancient puzzle. Something about him drew me in immediately. We talked about art, about the stories hidden in brushstrokes and shadows. His words weren't surface-level pleasantries. They had depth, substance. With John, conversations are practical. What's for dinner? How's Emily doing? Did you pay the water bill? With Andrew, it was different. Every word felt electric, alive. When he handed me his number, I should've walked away. But I didn't. I kept it, folding the slip of paper neatly and tucking it into my purse. Days passed. I stared at that number more times than I'd care to admit before I finally texted him. It didn't feel like a betrayal then. It felt like a lifeline. The water from the kitchen faucet runs cold, but I don't move to shut it off. I just stand there, staring out the window into the dark. Guilt isn't what tugs at me. It's irritation. Why should I feel bad? Our marriage hasn't been a marriage in years. We're like business partners managing the same account. John and I talk logistics, not dreams. When was the last time he made me laugh until my stomach hurt? Andrew does. He's younger, vibrant, and full of life. He looks at me like I'm more than the woman who folds his socks or reminds him about dentist appointments. I set the wine glass in the sink and wipe my hands on a towel. There's a message waiting on my phone, Andrew, no doubt. He's careful, always discreet. I don't worry about being found out because, honestly, why would John look? He trusts me. He trusts me enough to be blind. I wonder if Emily knows. Not about Andrew, of course, but about the cracks in the foundation of our family. She's perceptive, my daughter, with an uncanny ability to read between the lines. Maybe that's why I feel the weight of Tim's words. She deserves to know the truth. But which truth? The one about Andrew? Or the one about the years of quiet discontent that led me here? I sit on the couch, staring at the phone in my lap. A message from Andrew lights up the screen. Tomorrow, same place? A simple question, but it sends my heart racing. John comes down the stairs, his footsteps steady and deliberate. He's holding a mug, steam curling up from it. You coming to bed? He asks, his tone neutral. In a bit, I reply. He nods, pausing for a moment like he's going to say something else. But he doesn't. He never does. When he's gone, I exhale, relief washing over me. I've mastered this balancing act, this double life. Andrew is a spark, a secret I carry with me like a talisman. I tell myself it doesn't change anything, that I'm still the same Jane, the same mother, the same wife. But am I? The next morning, I sit across from Emily at a coffee shop. She's glowing, her excitement for the upcoming wedding radiating off her in waves. She talks about flowers, guest lists, and color schemes, her hands animated as she speaks. Mom, are you even listening? She asks, snapping me out of my thoughts. Of course, I say, forcing a smile. But she knows me too well. Her expression softens, concern creeping in. Is everything okay? This is it. The opening. The moment I could tell her everything. But how do you tell your daughter that her parents' marriage is a sham? That her mother isn't the person she thinks she is? I'm just tired, I say instead, sipping my coffee to avoid her gaze. Later that evening, I find myself standing in front of the mirror, studying my reflection. I look the same as I always have, maybe a little older, a little more worn. But inside, I feel like a stranger to myself. John walks in, his presence filling the room. He looks at me, really looks at me for the first time in what feels like years. You've been distant, he says. I freeze, the weight of his words settling over me. What do you mean? I don't know. It's like you're here, but you're not, he says, his voice tinged with sadness. The guilt I've been ignoring bubbles to the surface. For a moment, I consider telling him the truth. About Andrew. About everything. But the words catch in my throat. I'm just tired, I say again, the lie tasting bitter. John nods, but I can see the doubt in his eyes. He turns and walks away, leaving me alone with my reflection. That night, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling. The house is silent, but my mind is anything but. Tim's voice echoes in my head. Start with Emily. The truth is a ticking time bomb, and I'm running out of time to decide which version of it to tell. By the next morning, I've made a decision. Emily deserves to know. Not everything, not yet, but enough. Enough to understand the cracks she's likely already noticed. When I sit her down later that week, the words don't come easily. They're heavy, tangled, and painful, but they come. Her reaction isn't what I expect. There's no anger, no judgment, just quiet understanding. Mom, she says, taking my hand, I just want you to be happy. Her words hit me harder than anything else could. Happiness. A simple word, but one I've been chasing in all the wrong ways. As I leave her apartment, the weight in my chest feels a little lighter. The road ahead is still uncertain, full of difficult conversations and choices. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. Life isn't perfect. It's messy, complicated, and full of cracks. But maybe just maybe, it's not too late to start patching them.